You are in the year 892 CE, in the heart of Constantinople, capital of the Byzantine Empire. The air smells faintly of beeswax and olive oil, and the muffled sounds of foot traffic echo down narrow cobblestone alleys. Your name might not be recorded in history, but you are indispensable in a city where both the sacred and the mundane rely on light. You are a candlemaker, not a merchant, not a priest, not a warrior, just one of many quiet workers producing the necessary glow for rituals, homes, temples, and tombs. Your work is unglamorous, repetitive, and sticky, but in a world without electricity, your hands produce what keeps the night at bay. You wake long before sunrise, third watch, while Constantinople still sleeps under layers of incense and shadow. The first sounds of morning come from within. The soft stirring of animals in the yard, the whistle of water heating over the brazier, the rustle of your apprentice stirring in the straw. You begin with the wax. Byzantine candles are made from beeswax, preferred for its clean burn, sweet smell, and connection to purity in Orthodox Christianity. Tallow-rendered animal fat is cheaper, but frowned upon in ecclesiastical settings. Beeswax is expensive, and bees are state-managed property in many provinces. Your family buys the wax in bulk from nearby monasteries, which often receive it in lieu of taxes. You melt the wax in a large bronze basin, stirring slowly with a wooden rod. The wax must not boil, it must melt evenly. A spoiled batch means wasted coin, wasted work. The rhythm of this stirring is meditative, a kind of quiet prayer. Meanwhile, your apprentice, just 13, already callus twists the linen threads for wicks. Wicks are never just string. They are spun to a precise density, dipped in water, then coated in ash and dried. This keeps the flame slow and steady. You inspect the wicks. You always inspect the wicks. A bad wick means a bad candle, and a bad candle means a frustrated priest or a dim-lit funeral procession. You remember last winter when a noble's candle sputtered during a christening. The scolding came swift and sharp. Even simple things have standards. The wax is ready. You dip the first row of wicks into the golden pool. The first dips barely coat the wick. Each layer hardens slightly before the next, forming the solid, cylindrical body. You dip, wait, dip, wait, again and again, hanging each row on a wooden frame to cool. Your workshop smells like an apiary, and a shrine heavy perfume of wax, smoke, and old wood. It's not fast work. You may produce a few dozen candles in a morning. Larger ceremonial ones take far longer. Some orders request inscribed candles, carved with prayers, saints' names, or sigils. For this, you use a bone stylus once cooled. Candle making is not done for art, it is for survival. You sell to local churches, small shrines, and noble homes. Some monks brew their own candles, but many prefer to buy especially for feast days or when they're short on labor. You keep a ledger, though you cannot read it yourself. Your cousin, literate from his time in the army, helps with that once a week. Candles in exchange for grain, for fish, for linen. You once received a broken lute. You don't get rich, but your family eats, and your reputation protects you from beggars, curses, and guards' suspicion. Your life is unremarkable, and all the more safe for it. You step outside to wash your hands and stretch your back. Across the alley, a baker throws out burnt bread. A group of palace eunuchs walk past, laughing in clipped Greek. One of them nods at you. You nod back. There is talk. In the streets, always talk. Attacks increase. A border skirmish in the east. Rumors of another plague ship from Egypt. None of it affects your candles. Or so you tell yourself. Your neighbor, a cooper, shouts something about the price of resin. Ache. You scrape hardened wax from the floor, melt it down, and repeat the dipping process. Nothing is wasted. Even the broken candle ends are sold for alms boxes or melted for new ones. You reflect on your place in this city a craftsman, not quite poor, not quite noticed. The city needs you, but it will never remember you. As the sun sets, your last task is delivery. You walk candles to the Church of the Holy Apostles, where an acolyte accepts them with a grumble. The church is grand, and you are not allowed past the narthex. But as you turn to leave, you catch a glimpse of gold mosaic under lamplight. You imagine your candle's soft flame dancing beneath the eyes of saints. You wonder if your work means something more, or if it's all just wax and time. You return home with empty hands and wax under your nails. Tomorrow it will begin again, but as you lie in your straw mattress, you find yourself wondering. You awaken once more in the earliest light of Constantinople. The city still cloaked in the haze of morning mist and incense smoke drifting from open chapels. The rooster down the alley crows, as it always does, far too early, far too loud. Your body protests. The repetitive labor of dipping, lifting, cooling, and shaping has made your shoulders perpetually tight and your fingers thickened with small scars. You swing your feet over the stuffed mattress and begin your day. But today is different. Today is a feast day, the feast of Saint Makarios, patron of monks, and one of the lesser celebrated but logistically significant days on the ecclesiastical calendar. And that means bulk orders in the great ecclesiastical machinery of Byzantium. Holy days are not just for worship, they are economic engines. Your candle shop runs busiest around these days. Requests from the clergy pile up. Long ceremonial candles for processions, stubby ones for private prayers, candles of black wax for morning rituals, red-dyed ones for martyrdom commemorations. Your apprentice is already layering linen wicks on the wooden racks before you arrive at the workshop. You nod in approval. You retrieve yesterday's batches and begin inspecting the seams. Some are flawed thin at the base or uneven. You'll trim and sell those to households. Imperfection is tolerable in homes, not in churches. God expects symmetry. A messenger monk arrives mid-morning. He's from the monastery of Studios, just inland, and has come to collect an order of 100 tapers. You retrieve the bundles from a clay-sealed cupboard and hand them over with a brief bow. The monk doesn't thank you. He doesn't have to. You are a tool in a holy mechanism. Your wax simply another offering rendered down from bee and toil into light. Yet, this order keeps your roof in place for another month. You take the afternoon to visit the Forum of Constantine, the hub where merchants, tanners, masons, and candle makers like you converge for materials, chatter, and sometimes gossip that doubles as intelligence. The price of beeswax is rising. A storm reportedly destroyed a key shipment from the Anatolian plateau. Another rumor suggests imperial bees from the gardens of the great palace are being reserved solely for military and court use. Likely untrue, but still you take note. You find yourself bartering with a linen merchant for wick thread. She drives a hard deal, complaining about flax rot and river pirates. Eventually, you trade 5 stubby home-use candles for 2 full skeins of thick thread linen. You walk away with a small victory. Candles are functional currency in parts of the city. When coins are scarce or devalued, candles step in. You've paid a surgeon once in candles. You've bribed a guardsman with one on a cold night. You've even bartered them for books your cousin translated from Latin to Greek. You've also had your candles refused. A merchant once sniffed at your bundle and claimed they were too yellow. Another once returned an entire order after deciding the wax held too much smoke memory, whatever that meant. Your livelihood dances on perceptions you cannot control. You pause by the Church of the Virgin of the Pharos, the spiritual anchor of imperial piety. A procession is underway small by ceremonial standards, but no less meticulous. Priests in embroidered robes march slowly, swinging censers. Acolytes carry banners, taper, and the burn pattern. You know it as if you raised it yourself. You watch it flicker in the shadow of saints and stone. It is not pride you feel. Not exactly. It's more like recognition. You are not a name in the procession, but your presence is there later that day. You receive a visit from Nicatus, a senior member of the Candlemakers Guild. Guilds in Constantinople aren't optional. You pay dues. You follow rules. You don't undercut prices unless you want your shop mysteriously robbed or your tools accidentally confiscated by the city guard. Nicatus checks your workspace, nods approvingly at your wick twist ratio, asks a few curt questions about recent shipments, and leaves a written announcement. A new tax. You frown. The empire needs coin always, coin to pay soldiers, bribe enemies, and feed Constantinople's endless appetite for bread, salt, and spectacle. And now, part of that weight will fall on your beeswax-stained shoulders. Your wife returns from the market. She's frustrated. Prices have climbed again. Your youngest child has a fever. In silence and listen. You do not have answers. Byzantium is a city that devours effort. You toil, you make, you comply. And in return, the city does not thank you. It simply allows you to remain. You light a test candle, one of your better ones, and place it in the small wooden shrine by the door. Icons of saints watch you with unchanging gazes. The wax melts. In slow rivulets down the side, you note the burn rate. You watch the soot halo form on the stone shelf. The latrine is not just a bathroom. It's a public space, a place for information, for transactions, for overheard secrets. You've seen spies meet here, lovers rendezvous, deals struck between men of wealth and power, all while relieving themselves. You keep their secrets. That's part of the job. You eat a cold lentil cake around midday, seated behind the entrance wall. Bread, olives, water. Your apprentice arrives, thin, and still disgusted by the work. You tell him stories while you rest your feet. Then a crash from inside. A collapsed stool. One of the old ones. A man curses loudly, his toga splashed with runoff. You rush in, apologize, replace the seat, mop the floor with salted water, and offer him a clean cloth for wiping. He does not thank you, but you fix the problem. That's enough. Toward the afternoon, a Greek physician arrives with a small group of students. They ask to observe the flow of sewage for a study. You allow it quietly flattered. He notes the consistency of stool, speculates on diet and health, and jots down observations in wax tablets. You think of how your daily drudgery might now appear in a medical manuscript, bound in leather and stored in Alexandria or Pergamon. Still, you return to wiping the walls clean after they leave. Knowledge comes and knowledge goes. You remain. Evening brings fewer visitors. Most have gone home or to taverns. You light the oil lamps along the corridor. The shadows cast by the holes in the bench stretch long and strange. Some people leave. Small offerings to Closina, goddess of the sewer. A few coins, a bit of incense, a carved charm. You sweep them respectfully into a jar. You're not a religious man, but you understand reverence, especially toward what lies beneath. You empty the sponge basin one last time, scrub the floors, rinse the marble. The water runs clear for now. You lean against the doorframe, breathing in the humid air, eyes heavy. You wonder. Rome, often so alive in the early hours, seems to hold its breath. You notice it as soon as you arrive at the latrine. Fewer voices, fewer footsteps. The air is heavy. The aqueduct water flows more slowly through the troughs, and there's a new, sour smell in the air different from the familiar rot of daily waste. Something is wrong. By midday, rumors spread. A fever in the Trans-Tiberum district across the river. People whisper about contaminated water, about curses, about rats. You do not believe in omens, but your work depends on the cleanliness of that water, the aqueducts that feed your latrine part of Rome's mighty infrastructure are centuries old. The Aqua Marcia, Aqua Appia, and others bring water from miles away. They feed fountains, baths, latrines, and households alike, but they are not infallible. The Castellum Devasorium, the great distribution tank that manages city water, has been under strain. Maintenance delays, corrupt officials skimming funds, and winter storms in the Sabine Hills have slowed the flow. You and other foricari are the first to notice. No water, no latrine, no sanitation, plague. You've tried warning local magistrates. One listened. Most waved you off. You are, after all, just a man who watches toilets. By the second day, the fever reaches your district. Someone vomits near the latrine entrance. Another soils the bench and collapses before you can intervene. You remove him with the help of your apprentice, both of you wrapping scarves around your faces, rubbing vinegar into your hands. There's no real cure, only containment. You increase the vinegar in the sponge basins. You wash the floors hourly. You block one of the benches from use. You pour extra salt water down the waste channels. Other latrines close. Yours stays open. Because if it closes, where will the sick go? Into alleyways, into fountains, into open gutters. You cannot afford that. Rome cannot afford that. On the third day, an aedile arrives, an elected official in charge of public works. Dressed in crisp linen, he walks through your latrine with a cloth pressed to his nose. He declares that all public latrines are to be shut down until further notice. You protest, calmly but firmly. You explain how waste will back up, how runoff will infect the streets, how the Cloaca Maxima is already working overtime. He does not listen. He leaves behind a wax-sealed scroll, authorizing the closure. You do not obey, not fully. You close the front entrance, hang a rope, and nail the scroll in place for show. But the back door remains cracked open. Word spreads among locals. For those who understand, who need it most, the latrine is still open, quiet, clean. You risk punishment, but you risk worse by staying silent. Your job was never about merely cleaning. You are a gatekeeper, a sanitarian, a listener to old men's grumbles and women's complaints. You know how to read illness in the eyes, how to tell when someone hasn't eaten, how to spot signs of dysentery or dehydration from the sounds of the bench. You don't have a physician's toga or a priest's blessing, but your hands know the pulse of the city in ways the Senate never will. You feel its health in the rush of the channels that evening. Long after curfew, a woman arrives, carrying a child. The child is burning with fever. She asks, begs for clean water. You have little to give, but you lead her to the vinegar basin, clean the child's face, offer a rag soaked in cool water. She thanks you. She doesn't ask your name. You don't ask hers. In Rome, mercy is often anonymous. A few days later, an old physician named Galerius stops by. You've seen him before, lecturing young Medici. He's heard your latrine is still operating. You expect a reprimand. Instead, he praises your judgment. He examines your setup. He asks about runoff rates, salt levels, traffic volume. He nods at your vinegar ratio. He suggests adding lime powder near the entrances and offers you a small supply. From his own stock, you realize something rare. A man of knowledge recognizes your work. He leaves with a small bow. You return it, stunned. As the week wanes, the fever subsides. The latrine becomes busy again. The edile never returns. The scroll remains nailed to the wall, faded, ignored. You sit at the back, watching the marble seats fill and empty. The water runs smoothly. The sponge basins are full. The sunlight flickers on wet stone. And you wonder, what is Rome, if not a collection of systems? Water, waste, law, labor. Remove one, and the rest wobble. What is civilization, if not the effort to manage? The unglamorous. It is autumn now, in Rome. The air hangs thicker, cooler, and the leaves of the fig trees by the aqueducts fall in slow, lazy spirals. You've worked the latrine near the Thermae of Agrippa for over 13 years, and for the first time, you notice it. Things are slowing down. The aqueduct delivers water, but less of it. The sewer grates groan when they should gurgle. The city officials speak of military tensions in the Germania provinces. You hear complaints about bread rations, grain shortages from Egypt, and the rising price of vinegar. Even the tertiary communal sponges are frayed. Late, or not at all, Rome still stands. But there is a crack in the rhythm. You feel it in the stone beneath your feet. Your latrine has outlived emperors, outlived earthquakes, outlived religious reforms. It is older than your father was when he died. The marble is worn smooth by generations of Roman rears. There are graffiti scratched into the stone poems, insults, prayers. One crude drawing of a gladiator, a message scratched in Greek. Toilet is life. You run your fingers over the words, wondering if the man who wrote it felt what you do now. Strange mix of fatigue and loyalty. A sense that this small, stinking place is more enduring than the temples built in marble. You whisper aloud, toilet is life. You almost laugh. Almost disaster strikes during the festival of Saturnalia. The latrine is flooded not from use, but from a blockage in the Cloaca Maxima, the great underground artery of Roman sanitation. A buildup of sediment and offal has backed the channel up, and water spills over your latrine's waste flow. You wade in again, pole in hand, shoulders set. You know that the Subura, the densely populated quarter nearby, depends on your latrine. So you strip your tunic, tie cloth around your nose, and get to work. The channel gives way after hours of scraping. It clears with a sickening gulp, as if Rome herself had just drawn a breath. The flood recedes. The bench is saved. You pour vinegar by the bucket. By morning, it's usable again. News spreads of trouble at the frontier. Tribes along the Rhine, they say, are testing Rome's strength. The emperor sends more legions. The Senate grumbles. Taxes increase. And yet, in your latrine, people still come, still sit, still talk. One man offers you a rationed loaf in thanks. A girl brings a bunch of wild thyme to leave by the sponge basin. It smells better than vinegar, she says. Someone carves a line of poetry into the marble. Though Rome may crumble, still I squat. You don't know if it's a joke or a prayer, maybe both. As Christianity spreads through Rome, some changes reach even your latrine. The old offerings to Clicina, goddess of sewers, have stopped. Instead, someone paints a small cross on the stone above the sponge basin. You do not touch it. New prayers are whispered by some visitors. Deliver us from illness. Blessed be the pure. Forgive our waste. You don't care what they pray, so long as they keep the floor clean. Still, a part of you wonders if there is some sanctity in what you do, if cleanliness, humility, and silence are also forms of worship. Your apprentice, now a man, is ready. He handles the sponge basins with care. He jokes with regular visitors. He notices when the water flow changes. He has even started carving new bench seats with steadier hands than you ever had. You've told him everything: when to bribe the aediles, where to pour the lime, how to read the flow of human waste like an augur reading entrails. One morning, he stops you before you leave and says, "You've kept this city breathing longer than any of its senators." You say nothing, but your chest feels warm, and not from the vinegar fumes. In old age, your joints rebel. You can no longer clear blockages. You sit more often than you stand. The work passes to younger hands, but you remain nearby, watching, listening. Some nights, as you lie on your cot, you can still hear the water channels in your dreams, soft, steady, like the breathing of the earth. You think of all the men and women you've seen, the arguments, the reconciliations, the weeping, the laughter, all over shared stone, running water, and the quiet human need for relief. You know you won't live much longer. So, one morning before sunrise, you return to the latrine alone. It is empty, quiet, and cold. You light a small oil lamp and place it in the corner. You sit on one of the stone benches and whisper, "This is Rome. Not the Senate, not the Forum, not the circus. This, the water, the stone, the cleaning, the care, the work no one sees." You touch the marble one last time, close the door behind you, and leave it to others. In history books, they will write about emperors, conquerors, and architects, but they will forget the They will forget the backs bent in stone halls, the hands raw from lime and vinegar, the quiet men who kept Rome hygienic, functional, and human. And so we ask, the year is 1143 CE, and you are a Benedictine monk in the Abbey of Saint Martial, in Limoges, France. You do not own a watch. You do not consult a sundial to check your schedule. You do not hear the ticking of gears or the swing of pendulums, but your life is governed, absolutely ruled by time. Not modern time, broken into minutes and seconds, but sacred time, measured in psalms, shadows, candles, and bells. You rise, work, pray, eat, read, pray again, and sleep all, according to a system that knows no machines, only rituals. The rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century, governs your day. And time is not a personal possession, it is a shared communal rhythm. You are not its master, you are its humble servant. Your day is divided into 8 hours, known as the Divine Office or Liturgy of the Hours, Matins night prayer, often before dawn lauds early morning praise. At sunrise prime, 1st hour around 6 a.m. terce, 3rd hour about 9 a.m. sext, 6th hour noon none, 9th hour around 3 p.m. vespers, evening prayer. At sunset compline, final prayer. Before sleep, these hours are not evenly spaced or based on exact minutes. They change with the season, the latitude, and the length of day. A 3rd hour in winter comes sooner than in summer. The passage of time is organic, tied to the shifting natural world. You are roused by the bell tower during the 3rd or 4th watch of the night matins, the first prayer of the day. The bell is not mechanical. A younger monk, appointed each week, watches the night sky and lights a candle when he senses the hour is right. Sometimes he is early, sometimes late. No one scolds. Time here is not precision, it is intention. In the candlelit chapel, you and your brothers chant psalms in Gregorian mode. The sound echoes gently off the stone walls. There are no clocks, no schedules on parchment, only voice and memory, rhythm and silence. After matins and lauds, you return to the dormitory briefly, but soon it is prime, the first daylight hour. Time now is measured by candle burn. Monks in the scriptorium use candles marked with notches. As each portion of wax melts away, it marks a quarter or half hour. Others use water clocks, called clepsydruge, that fill or empty at known rates. They are not exact, especially when it rains or freezes, but they're enough. Some older monks count heartbeats. One claims he can feel exactly 300 pulses in the space between terce and sext. You don't question him. Time, in your abbey, is both measured and felt. The most respected monk is the bell ringer or campanarius. His task is holy, delicate, and vital. He sleeps little, watches the stars, feels the wind, measures the angle of the sun by the shadow cast on a carved stone in the courtyard. He decides when each bell rings not by clock, but by intuition honed over years. If he is sick, time falters, prayers drift, meals are late. The abbey's rhythm becomes unsettled. One late bell can throw off the entire day's sacred choreography. So you thank the bell ringer silently. Every time you hear that low, familiar chime between prime and terce, you enter the scriptorium. You spend this time copying holy texts by hand, black ink on scraped parchment. The process is slow, each letter deliberate. Your supervisor tracks time not by hourglass or clock, but by number of pages completed, amount of daylight, and how often the inkwell is refilled. When the sun shifts across the window arch, it is time to change tasks. When the shadows grow long on the floor, it is sexed. Time is ambient, not absolute. Like breathing, at sext, the bell rings again. You leave your quill, stretch your back, and move in silence to the refectory. Meals are timed not by hunger, but by ritual. If the sun is obscured by clouds, you eat earlier. If it shines long and high, the meal is late. There are no announcements, no chimes to mark minute 4:3, only the bell and the shared understanding of time past. You eat bread, fish, beans, always in silence, while a monk reads aloud from scripture or the rule. Your chewing keeps pace with sacred syllables. After sext comes manual work, gardening, stone repair, wood cutting, wine storage. Each task has no strict start or stop. You work until the sun reaches a certain shadow mark on the chapel's southern wall. It has always been there, faint discoloration, a groove worn smooth over centuries. At that point, it is none. The 9th hour, you stop, not because someone told you to, because the light told you to. Evening comes early in autumn. The shadows stretch across the cloister. The garden hushes. Birds quiet themselves in the eaves. The bell for vespers is deeper, more melancholy. You gather with the other monks and sing in lower tones. The acoustics of the chapel cradle your voices like old hands. There is a kind of sadness to this hour, a kind of beauty, too. You think about time again, not as a number, but as a companion, always present, sometimes invisible, like God. The final bell rings Compline. The chapel is lit with only 3 candles. One flickers and gutters as a breeze passes. The brother next to you leans forward and shields it with his hand. You sing quietly. You know the words by heart. There is no written schedule to check, no timepiece to track. You do not know if it is 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or even 7:30. You only know that the day is ending. You lie in your straw-stuffed mattress in the dormitory, thinking. You rise again before dawn. The abbey is silent. There is no sound but the wind slipping through the stone arches and the soft crunch of straw as the brethren stir. There is no certainty in your waking hour, no alarm, no device, no timepiece, and yet you are never late. You know when to rise, because your bones feel the shift of the air. Your ears sense the stillness just before the sky lightens. Time, in this life, is not a number to be hunted, but a seasoned presence, known guest who enters the house without knocking. You carry your copy of the Rule of Saint Benedict, like scripture. It tells you how many psalms to chant, how long to pause, when to eat, and how to work. It does not give you hours on a dial. It gives you intervals of devotion. Saint Benedict calls for balance. Ora et labora pray, and work. He does not specify whether lauds begins at exactly 5:15 or whether terce should last 25 minutes. Instead, the rule teaches consistency through attention, attention to light, to season, to the bell, to the slow passage of time as it flows through your day, like a river not to be stopped or measured, only recognized in your abbey. Time is auditory. The bell rings to call, to remind, to structure. Its tones differ. A single deep toll signals matins. A trio of fast peals means terce. A slower sequence denotes the call to compline. You do not need to count them anymore. You recognize their pattern like one recognizes a friend's voice in the dark. The bell rope hangs from the belfry where the bell ringer waits. He uses no hourglass. He judges time by the length of the shadow that touches the south wall, or by the rate at which oil burns in the chapel's lamp. If it burns low before vespers, he adds more oil next time. The entire abbey pivots around this fluid but firm reckoning of time. In the scriptorium, where you resume your copying work, a candle clock burns silently on the windowsill. It is a thick taper marked with lines, each signifying approximately 20 minutes of burn time. But weather affects it. Humidity slows the melt. Wind speeds it, so you watch not the clock, but the wax dot. You learn its language. A leaning flame means the window shutter needs adjustment. A crackling wick hints the air is too dry. A pool of wax forming too quickly means the wick is trimmed too short. You adjust accordingly, not for exact time, but for consistency. Time is not enforced, it is cared for. Your abbey is fortunate. It includes a monk who studied in Toledo, where translations of Arabic astronomical texts have begun to circulate. He is called Frater Armandus, and though his vows keep him humble, he is an expert in celestial timekeeping. In spring and autumn, he sets up a gnomon, tall rod in the garden that casts a shadow across a marked stone. From the angle and length of the shadow, he estimates solar time and adjusts the bell schedule when needed. He sometimes uses a portable astrolabe, a brass disc with intricate engravings, to chart the stars and correct for seasonal variation. You do not fully understand how it works, but when he explains it, his voice is reverent, as if the heavens themselves are the abbey's clock face, and you believe him. Once a week, you are sent to work in the abbey gardens and the grain field beyond the cloister. Out there, time is measured without aid. The sun tells you when to begin weeding and when to rest. The sound of birds shifts as morning turns to noon. The dampness of the soil beneath your knees dries gradually as time passes. Some brothers mark time by the number of rows completed, others by the feeling in their lower back. One old monk claims he can smell when it's the 9th hour. You believe him. In this world, the body is a clock. If one learns to listen, winter makes time slippery. With shorter days, the hours contract. Lauds comes before the first glint of light. Terce arrives before the rooster's call. Vespers begins as the sun disappears behind the monastery wall, sometimes as early as mid-afternoon. The candle clocks become unreliable. They burn faster in the dry air, slower in the cold. The bell ringer grows more cautious. He wakes before the others to watch the stars, gauging how they shift from east to west, from horizon to zenith. He teaches you to look for Orion's belt and the position of Venus', useful markers of when to wake, when to pray, when to work. Still, there are days when everything feels off. Are not servants of time, but companions to it. There are no punishments for being late, not in the modern sense. But if a monk consistently fails to attend the offices or neglects his labor, he must atone. The point is not efficiency, but order. Timekeeping is not about productivity. It is about living in harmony with others. and with God. You do not hurry to meet time. You meet it halfway, each hour an offering. One day a traveler arrives, a merchant from Genoa, allowed into the abbey's guest house. He carries a clockwork device, small, brass, noisy. He claims it came from Milan, says it can measure time to the minute, says it uses a mechanism of falling weights and gears. He shows it to the guest master, who is unimpressed. It ticks loudly. It does not match the sun, nor the candle, nor the prayer bell. The monks shake their heads. It is clever, says your abbot, but it is not correct. The merchant laughs. Soon all towns will have them. The cathedral in sense is building one. You wonder what a world of measured minutes might feel like. Would prayers be more pure if timed to the second? Would work be more holy? Or would everything simply speed up until no one remembers why they started at all? As you drift to sleep beneath woolen blankets, you hear the distant sound of the chapel bell. You do not know the time in numbers, but you feel it in your chest, and you ask, frail to climb the stone tower. He now instructs from below, guiding you with nods and short corrections. You are the others, as he once did. You watch the sky turn deep blue from the tower steps. You measure the shadow of the cloisters cross against the garden wall. You feel stewardship. The abbey breathes in rhythm because of you. If you miss a beat, the whole body falters. Then, one spring morning, a team of stonemasons and metalworkers arrives. They bring with them a new device, a mechanical clock, funded by a distant bishop. It will be mounted into the abbey's bell tower, connected to a new iron bell that strikes at fixed intervals. You are told this will relieve you of your duties. No more measuring shadows. No more listening to wax hiss or water drip. No more looking to the stars. Now, time will be measured with gears, weights, and hammers. It will not guess. It will know. It will strike exactly every hour, regardless of weather, prayer, or silence. The tick will replace the pause between breaths. You watch them build it, a series of wheels and rods, driven by falling weights, lifted by a crank each day. When released, the mechanism releases a lever that drops a hammer onto the bell. It rings without discretion, interrupting meals, study, even sacred pauses. It does not care whether Compline has finished. It does not wait for the rhythm of the chant to conclude. It rings, always. Monks begin to eat faster. Some shorten their readings. The silence at meals is now measured by clock ticks instead of the cadence of the spoken word. The abbey moves faster, but somehow feels thinner. You find yourself waking later, not by choice, but because the clock is now your master. Its bell rouses the dormitory. You no longer gaze at Orion or check the gnomon in the courtyard. You do not measure by scent or flame or gut. You wait for the strike of the iron tongue. You no longer choose when to pull the rope. The machine pulls for you. Frater Armandus, the astronomer monk, grows quiet. He no longer charts the stars with such frequency. His notes have thinned, his parchment curling in the damp. The stars still move. He tells you one evening, but no one's watching anymore. You know what he means. You too have stopped watching, stopped listening. The candle clocks gather dust in the scriptorium. The sundial's stone face grows moss. The water clocks have cracked from disuse. The new monks no longer learn how to read the shadows. They learn how to wind the crank. One day, the merchant from Genoa returns. He tours the abbey's tower and nods approvingly. "You are modern now," he says. "One of the first, the Pope himself, will be jealous." He offers to bring smaller versions portable, even once the artisans of Milan perfect their work. You cannot imagine carrying time in your pocket. You wonder if time becomes portable. Will it follow you, or will you chase it forever? On a rare, free day, you wake early before the bell. You climb the tower. You listen. No ticking dot. The mechanism has jammed overnight. The weights have stalled, and for a single morning, the abbey returns to silence. You ring the bell by hand, once, slowly. Matins. The monks walk quietly. Prayers lengthen. Meals linger. No one mentions the clock's silence, but you see it in their faces, a relief, or perhaps a remembering. You do not repair it until nightfall. Years pass. The machine remains. The younger monks never knew anything else. Some of them joke about before the tick. They mean it kindly, but you feel the loss. The rule of Saint Benedict is still followed. The divine offices are still sung. The scriptures are still copied. But now the monks glance upward, not at the stars or shadows, but at the small clock face installed in the tower. Visibility, perhaps less divine. You retire, no longer bell ringer, no longer timekeeper. You sit in the garden, listening not for bells, but for birdsong. You feel the light on your skin and think. It is the year 1731 CE, in the heart of Idotha, seat of the Tokugawa shogunate, and the largest city in the world. Over 1 million people live here, crowded into wooden tenements, samurai estates, merchant shops, shrines, and tea houses. The streets are bustling, narrow, and unpredictable, and every one of those streets needs to be cleaned. That is your job. You are a member of the Edo, are not a samurai. You are not a merchant. You are a street cleaner, part of the low-ranked bureaucratic caste known as Hinena, non-people. But without you, the city would collapse into disease, fire, and chaos. You sweep, you scrape, you coordinate, you endure, and like the city itself, you do not stop. Most of Edo's residents never see the full picture of how their city stays clean, but you do. The sanitation system is a bureaucratic web, divided into wards, blocks, and districts, each managed by a team of cleaners, inspectors, and supervisors. You report to a middle manager, known as a Yuriki, who reports to the Bugyo, the cleaning magistrate himself, appointed directly by the shogun. Twice a day, you and your team sweep assigned routes, streets, alleys, gutters, marketplaces, and bridge approaches. Each route is timed to avoid peak foot traffic. You wear a conical straw hat, a tied headscarf, but rarely seen, you carry a bamboo broom, rough but flexible, a flat wooden dustpan, wicker bucket for collecting debris, long-handled hook for pulling out clogs in drainage ditches, and a small bottle of vinegar used for sanitizing hand tools. After contact with waste or dead animals, your broom is your companion. It wears down with use, fraying into jagged bristles over weeks. You rebind it with cord, trim it with a knife, and carry it like a sword axe, except yours fights rot, not rebellion. Your day begins just after the morning temple bells ring from the SSUG temple. You report to your assigned corner of the Asakusa district, where street stalls are just beginning to open grilled fish, rice, porridge, lacquerware, hairpins. You nod to the fishmonger, who always dumps his scraps too close to the drainage channel. You sweep carefully, methodically, ever too fast, never wasteful. The dust is dry. The gutters smell faintly of old soy sauce, urine, and spilled sake. You gather the debris in your bucket: rice husks, fish bones, pieces of paper from fortune slips, a bent hairpin, bits of charcoal. Everything has a place, even trash. There is no such thing as throwing away. In Edo. Every kind of waste has a value to someone. Ashes are collected and sold to fertilizer. Merchants' broken crockery is ground for pottery. Filler human waste night. Soil is collected in wooden barrels, then sold to farmers outside the city as rich compost. You do not handle human waste directly. That belongs to the night soil collectors, who make surprisingly good money, but you do coordinate with them. You notify the waste barrel runners when barrels are full or missing. If you don't, the alley behind the bathhouse floods with overflow, and you're the one who will be sent to clean it. One morning you are summoned to a residential courtyard where the local magistrate's wife has thrown out an entire basket of burned calligraphy scrolls. They're not smoldering anymore, but the ash has spread down the alley like soft gray snow. You sweep slowly, preserving as much of the blackened paper as you can. You find fragments of poetry, names, a seal you don't recognize. You wonder why she burned them. No one speaks. You finish your work. You leave no trace behind. But the story clings to your sleeves like soot as the season turns toward youth. Rainy season, the streets change. Debris clings to stone. The gutters slow. Mold blooms between planks. Rain is a gift and a curse. It washes, but it also soaks. You are given special straw sandals to keep your feet dry and treated paper covers to wear over your shoulders. Your most important task now is fire prevention. Fires in Edo are frequent and catastrophic. Wet debris can rot. Rot can spark mildew. And mildew, if ignored, creates the perfect fuel for the next great fire. You sweep not just for cleanness, but for survival. Every cleaned alley is a firebreak. Every swept step might save a life. Once a month, your route is inspected by a ranking samurai who carries a lacquered baton and takes notes on cleanliness compliance. He rarely speaks to you. If he nods once, it means satisfactory. Twice, exemplary. Once, years ago, you received 3 nods. You still remember that day. Part of your route includes a Shinto shrine near the edge of the district. You do not clean its inner courtyard. That is for the shrine maidens and priests, but you sweep the path leading to its gate. You always do so barefoot in silence before sunrise. No one told you to, but it feels right. Sometimes you pause there, just for a moment, before continuing. The sweep of the broom across stone becomes a kind of prayer. By the end of each day, your body aches. Your hands are cracked. Your bucket is full. And yet, most will never notice what you've done. They will not see the fire you prevented. They will not thank you for the fish bones you scraped from the gutter. They will not wonder how the streets stayed clean after the typhoon. But you know, and sometimes, as you rinse your tools in vinegar and bow toward the setting sun, you ask, Edo is a city of wood and paper. Homes have sliding shade doors made of rice paper. Shops are partitioned with paper screens. Even official notices are posted on thin brush-written Hanzadu slips nailed to wooden posts. These tear easily, They flutter away in the wind. They rot in the rain. Your first task this morning is to clear paper waste stuck in a drainage ditch. Near the Firewatch Tower, someone's thrown out a pile of torn kabuki playbills. They've turned to pulp, blocking the water channel. It smells faintly of wet ink, decay, and pickled daikon from a nearby food stall. You reach into the sludge with your hook, pulling the clumps free. You try not to think about what else is mixed in. This is not a glamorous job, but neither is the city's decay. At mid-morning, your team gathers beneath the ward headquarters for the day's assignments. A Yuriki reads the scroll aloud. Clean gutters near the Sakurabashi Bridge. Assist night soil porters on cannon. Alley inspect burned timbers near a recent house fire issue. 2 new warning flags for illegal dumping behind the geisha house. The orders are scribbled in elegant cursive kuzushiji. You cannot read it, but your lead foreman can. He points you toward the bridge. You walk without complaint. Your broom is slung over your back like a peasant's halberd. Your sandals are already wet. At Cannon Alley, you find the evidence before you find the perpetrator. A pile of old futon stuffing, wet and moldy, dumped in a quiet corner behind a shuttered restaurant. You check for markers, thread type, rice straw grade, any symbols on the cotton scraps. Someone tried to burn it before giving up. You place a wooden marker beside its bright red kanji for improper waste nailed to a bamboo stake. You make a note for the Yuriki. If it happens again, fines will follow. If the offender is identified, they may be made to sweep the ward publicly, a punishment of shame, not labor. You've seen it work before. Most people don't mind mess, but they fear being seen as the one who made it. Your nose is your most underrated tool. You learn to tell different kinds of decay by scent alone. Sour, acidic, rot, likely cabbage or pickled radish, days old. Ammonia sharpness, probably old urine. Or a broken night soil barrel. Sweet, oily smoke could mean a nearby tallow spill fire risk. Today, near the Sakurabashi Bridge, you catch the faint, sickly sweet smell of animal death. You follow it down the canal's edge and find a dead cat half covered by a rice sack lying in the reeds. Likely drowned during the last storm. You wrap it in cloth, bow once, and place it in the waste bucket reserved for animal remains. It will be burned at the edge of the city with other refuse. Tonight, you wash your hands in vinegar, then continue later. In the day, you are summoned to assist the Haikushi, the local fire brigade. A merchant's house in the Nihonbashi district recently caught fire contained, thankfully. But the charred remains of wood and ash now clog the alley. This cleanup is delicate. Charcoal dust floats easily and can choke the air. You and your team soak the area with buckets of water before sweeping. You wear a wet cloth across your face to avoid breathing in the soot. Among the wreckage, you find a melted inkstone, 2 burned geta sandals, and a fragment of porcelain bowl. You do not ask what caused the fire. The Haikushi don't say, but you wonder how many more are coming. Edo burns every few years. After all, your broom is ready. In the Yoshiwara district, the pleasure quarter, things are delicate. You do not clean inside the tea houses or brothels. Those are handled by their own staff. But you are responsible for the outer streets, where customers stagger out and drop things they no longer want. Handkerchiefs, sake bottles, the occasional coin. One night, you find a crushed hair comb and a half-burned love letter, discarded, near the ditch. You pick them up, place them in your bucket, and keep sweeping. Some things are best erased quietly. This is not just cleaning, it is maintenance of discretion. At midday, your team eats in silence, beneath a shaded alley. Rice, pickled, plum, a bite of dried fish. You eat quickly, not because of the work, but because of the flies. Edo is filled with animals. Dogs roam freely. Cats are encouraged to keep the rat population in check. Crows pick at open buckets. Mice and beetles infest refuse if left too long. You've learned to coexist. Sometimes a dog follows your broom like a toy. Sometimes a crow perches on a roof beam, watching with uncanny patience. You do not chase them. They are part of the city's metabolism. Just like you, at the end of your shift, you walk to the Sumida River, where today's waste is sorted. You separate the burnables from compostables. You hand over materials for the ash and fertilizer merchants. You ensure no useful material is discarded. Only what cannot be reclaimed goes to the fire. You bow before discarding the animal remains. You do not speak aloud, but your breath slows you. Do this every day. Sometimes you wonder, if the river remembers the things we give to it, does it also remember you? You walk home with your broom tucked under one arm. Your hands smell of vinegar and ash. Your sandals are worn. You will rise tomorrow and do the same, but tonight you think it is late autumn, and the wind carries a sharper bite. You are awakened before dawn, not by the temple bell, but by smoke far to the south, beyond the merchant districts. You see an orange glow in the darker, shimmering wall of fire, curling upward like a wave. Edo is burning. The fire began in the Kanda district, likely a cooking flame left unattended in a wooden paper house. Within hours, fanned by wind, it consumes half the ward. The city, built tight with flammable walls and narrow alleys, offers little resistance. By nightfall, entire blocks are gone. You and your fellow cleaners are not part of the fire brigades, but you're called, nonetheless, not to fight the fire, but to clean up what remains. You arrive at dawn. The air is dense with ash. The streets you swept 2 days ago no longer exist. Charred bamboo, melted sandals, broken crockery, warped coins, burned scrolls. A shop sign half hangs from a blackened beam. Brushmaker, 5th generation. Now the family is gone. The brushmaker's trade is ash. You and your crew move in silence. Brooms stir layers of soot, creating gray clouds that cling to your robes. You shovel debris into large baskets, cart them to dumping points, and return. Again and again. There is no ceremony, no audience, no reward, just the rebuilding of a city. One sweep at a time, you learn something strange about ash. It weighs less than memory. You carry 10 buckets a day. Your muscles aching, but still, the memories are heavier. You remember the children who used to chase your broom for fun, the old woman who bowed every morning, the street musician who gave you pickled plums for keeping his corner clean. Their faces hover over the charred foundations. You do not know where they are. You hope they ran. You do not ask. You just keep cleaning. A week after the fire, a scroll arrives at your ward headquarters, stamped with the red seal of the Edo Sanitation Magistrate. It outlines emergency protocols. Ash must be soaked before disposal burned. Wood is to be sorted by grade sum. maybe reused paper remnants, are to be collected for recycling into new hanshi. Sheets. Personal items, if found, are to be brought to the temple for purification. You nod as it's read aloud. You already do most of these things, but now it is law. This is how Edo works. Order through repetition. Cleanliness through cooperation. Dignity through duty. Weeks later, new construction begins. Temporary stalls rise. Shops are rebuilt. The smell of fresh timber replaces smoke. The city forgets quickly, but you remember the old streets. You know their shape. You feel their ghost in your souls as you walk the new ones. Your broom moves differently, now wary, respectful. You are not just cleaning, you are walking on the bones of memory. In early winter, the Jichinsai festival is held, a quiet ritual to pacify the kami of the land before new buildings are completed. At one shrine, you are asked to sweep the grounds beforehand. It is not a formal order. No one is watching. You sweep carefully, thoroughly. You pile the leaves into a neat bundle and burn them with salt, as tradition allows. As the smoke curls upward, you feel something loosen in your chest. Maybe this is what restoration feels like. Not the rebuilding of walls, but the quiet gesture that reminds the city how to breathe again. Years pass. You do not grow wealthy. You are not promoted. You do not leave Edo, but you are given something rare: familiarity. Shopkeepers wave to you. Children mimic your broom strokes in play. A young carpenter once brought you miso soup in the cold, saying, "My father was a cleaner, too." You are not named in any scroll, but your absence is felt when a street remains dirty, when the gutter floods, when no one clears the paper from the stone steps of the shrine. Your presence is defined by what is not their waste. Rot fire. A young boy joins your crew. He complains at first about the smells, the weight of the bucket, the blisters from the broom. But you see it, the slow shift, the quiet understanding, the way he stops to sweep around flower petals rather than through them, the way he bows to the shrine gate even when no one's looking. One day, he tells you, "I want to be the kind of cleaner people don't notice because everything already looks right." You nod. He understands. It is near sunset. The alley by the carpenter's quarter is clean. Your broom is frayed. Your body tired. You sit briefly on a crate, watching the dust catch in the golden light. You do not need applause. You do not need a nameplate. Because you've come to understand. Cleanliness is not the absence of dirt, it is the presence of care. And in a city of 1 million feet, that care must come from someone. It is 1864 CE, in the southern German town of Nuremberg, in the Kingdom of Bavaria. You are not a philosopher. You are not a painter or a poet. You are a pencil maker. You do not create ideas. You craft the thing that will record them. Your name will not appear on the books you make possible, nor in the ledgers you help fill, nor on the war maps your pencils will outline, but every day in a brick-walled factory that smells of cedar and oil. You slice, press, and seal thousands of slim wooden cylinders, simple, quiet tools that will quietly revolutionize the world's thinking. The factory is owned by a man whose name is well known, Johann Faber. Or perhaps it's one of the or Lyra, or Kynor. There are now several major pencil-making houses in Germany, each competing for contracts, for schools, for military orders. You work for one of them. You don't much care which dot your section of the factory produces the wooden casings, the bodies of the pencil. They must be precisely cut, cleanly hollowed, and smoothly sealed. Your job is to operate the planer, which turns raw cedar planks into slats precisely 7 millimeters thick. You guide the wood forward. The blade whines. The grain shivers under your hands. You do this hundreds of times a day. You no longer count the hours. You count by smell. Fresh cut cedar in the morning, boiled linseed oil by noon, graphite dust by mid-afternoon. This is the scent of modern literacy. The heart of the pencil is not lead, it is graphite, a mineral once mistaken for plumbum, Latin for lead, and still wrongly named for it. The best graphite comes from a mine in Cumberland, England, but the German factories use a more stable recipe: powdered graphite mixed with clay. This mix is shaped into rods and baked in kilns, turning them hard, dark, and smooth. These rods are cut to length and laid carefully into the grooved wooden slats you help prepare. A second slat is glued over them like a sandwich, and the whole is clamped until dry. This is called a pencil sandwich. You did not invent the term, but it makes you smile. Everything is measured. The slats must be 7 millimeters thick. The grooves must be 2 millimeters deep. The graphite core must align within 0.5 millimeter, or the pencil will break when sharpened. Each finished pencil must weigh the same, light enough for schoolchildren, strong enough for architects. You work in millimeters, even before Germany fully adopts the metric system. Precision matters more than politics here sometimes. A mismatched sandwich cracks under the press. When this happens, the supervisor frowns, not because of the cost, but because a broken pencil is a broken promise. In the spring, your factory receives a massive contract, 30,000 pencils for the Bavarian public school system. Education is expanding. Literacy is rising. Children need tools that are cheap, durable, and disposable. You increase your pace. More slats, more sandwiches, more pressing, more sanding. The finished pencils are stamped Faber No. 2, HB, Germany. You do not write your name. You only write theirs. In the next room, women work the sanding cloths, smoothing the hexagonal edges of the pencils after the glue dries. They work with cotton gloves, their hands stained gray with graphite. Some hum softly, others remain silent. They sort pencils by grade: H for hard, B for B, LACK, HB for general use, to B for H, and so on. You once tried to understand how the grades were made. The graphite is mixed with different amounts of clay. More clay equals harder. Pencil equals lighter mark. More graphite equals softer. Pencil equals darker line. You forgot the formula, but you remember how each one feels in your hand. At the far end of the workshop, an old man sits beside a tin bucket. He is the sharpener. He takes samples from every batch and sharpens them by hand-testing the lead for cracking, splitting, or shearing. If it breaks, the batch is rejected. His fingers are blistered and blackened. His left thumb bears a groove from 30 years of sharpening. He once told you, a good pencil should sharpen like slicing an apple, smooth, clean, no splinters. You never forgot that the factory is noisy, not from shouting, but from motion. The steady thump of presses, the high whine of planers, the hiss of glue, steam, the soft whisper of sanding cloth. No one speaks much. You wear cotton in your ears to dull the constant hum. the foreman carries a whistle, but only uses it to signal breaks. You don't mind the silence. It lets you hear the work. Sometimes you think of where the pencils go, into school satchels, beside slates and crusty lunch bread, into engineers' cases, where they sketch bridge angles in charcoalent military offices, where lines are drawn across maps with quiet finality into the sketchbooks of artists, where stillness becomes imager pencil, may write a love letter, or draw a battle plan, or correct a child's grammar. But it will not do these things alone. It only waits, and then it leaves a mark. At the end of the day, your fingertips are gray, your joints ache, your boots are coated in cedar dust. You sweep your bench clean, wonder. The factory is not yet humming. The planers are still quiet, the glue room cold. But you've been given a new task today: prototype sanding. The engineers are experimenting with a new casing technique, trying to reduce splintering during sharpening. It involves a wax-coated cedar laminate layered over the traditional slat. The wood feels wrong in your hands, slippery, less honest. You run it under the sander and note how it resists differently. You write nothing, but your hands tell you this will change the feel of the pencil. Not worse, not better, just different. And sometimes different means forgetting what we knew. News travels slowly, but the rumors reach your workbench. Factories in France and Austria are using synthetic graphite produced in labs using heat and carbonized materials. It's cheaper, easier to source, and blends smoothly with clay. Your foreman explains the change during your midday meal. We'll switch next year. The British Cumberland mine can't keep up. This is progress. You nod. But you remember the faint metallic smell of natural graphite, and how the synthetic mix smells dull in comparison, like chalk with secrets. Erased progress, perhaps, but not without a loss of texture. Once the pencils are sanded and sealed, they're painted. You step into the lacquering room to observe just once. You're not assigned here, but your break time allows it. Rows of pencils hang on wooden racks, dipped into oil-based paint, one by one, then hung to dry. The signature yellow coating is new this year, meant to signal quality to the expanding export markets in France and the United States. The painters are fast, careful. Each pencil rotates 3 times in a palm before it is dipped, once for balance, once for inspection, once for habit. One woman hums a hymn in rhythm with her dips. You watch as her hands stain red, blue, black. When she smiles, her teeth carry flecks of ochre. The factory is full of color, but only on the outside. That winter, a small shipment is prepared with unusual urgency. Boxes stamped with military crests, bundled with compass sets and paper. They are going to Prussian army officers. Your pencils will help plan rail lines, supply routes, fort placements, all with lines that can be erased and redrawn. They ask for harder graphite cores, the H varietal less likely to smudge. When folded into map books, you sharpen one before boxing. The line it draws is sharp gray, almost cold. It will be used to plan things you'd rather not think about. You close the box with care. Your hands remain steady, even if your heart does not. One morning, you cut yourself on the planer. A small nick, nothing serious. But you wrap it and work with one hand for the rest of the day. It slows you. Not just your speed, but your rhythm. The act of sliding cedar over metal now feels more fragile. You think of the others around you. Lena, who sands pencils while coughing from years of dustado, who lost 3 fingers and now works in packaging analysis, whose thumb never healed properly after a glue press incident, to all work by hand even as the machines grow faster, louder, more exact. But it is your imperfect hands that keep the pencils feeling human. Spring. He walks through the halls with gloved hands and a notebook. He nods at the machines, notes the cleanliness, watches you work for nearly 7 minutes without speaking. Then he says, "Your slats are well done, consistent." You nod, that's all. But later, you remember those words as you pack your tools. You are not an inventor, not a craftsman by title, but your consistency feeds 1,000 minds. Somewhere, someone will write a theory, sketch a cathedral, or pen a love letter with a pencil you helped make. And maybe, for a moment, your hand will echo in theirs. At the local tavern, a teacher from the schoolhouse joins your table. He carries a half-used Faber No. 2, sharpened to the nub. You recognize the paint pattern. It's from your batch. He doesn't know you made it. He simply says, "These new pencils last longer than they used to. The students waste less." You smile but say nothing. The pencil he carries is invisible until it breaks, just like you. You clean your bench at the end of the week and pause to examine the pile of wood shavings and graphite dust. You once thought of them as trash. Now you see ghosts of potential. A portrait, never drawn a sentence, never started day note, never passed you. Scoop them up gently, discard them with care. Even the byproduct of thought deserves respect. You lock the planer, wipe your hands, and head home under gray Bavarian skies. The streets are quiet. You think it is early summer, and the pencil factory breathes heavier than usual. The doors are open to the wind. Bees drift in, confusing lacquer for nectar. In the assembly room, thousands of pencils stand upright in drying racks, like a forest of miniature trees. You stand at your bench, brushing away flecks of sawdust from the final batch of the week. Each pencil has been cut, grooved, filled, glued, sanded, painted, stamped, polished. Now you are inspecting the final detail, the eraser mount, a recent edition one of American origin, where a rubber nub is held by a crimped brass ferrule at the top of the pencil. You gently twist each eraser to test it. If it spins, it fails. If it bends too easily, it fails. It's a strange thing, you think. A pencil, designed to leave a mark, now carries its own means of erasure. The eraser is a new kind of magic. Before, one used breadcrumbs or rough cloth to remove graphite. Now, this pink stub makes it easier to undo what was done. Lines, words, errors, equations. Some celebrate this, but you sometimes wonder, does making mistakes erasable make them less meaningful? Or does it encourage more freedom, more drafts, more designs, more courage to sketch the first line? You smile. Perhaps that's not yours to decide. You only build the tool that afternoon. You are asked to accompany a delivery team to the local grammar school, where the students are beginning their new term. You help unload crates of pencils. Children gather to watch what died, whispering, giggling. You notice one girl holding a pencil like a sword, pointing it at the sky. Another presses hers against a wall to draw a sun. One boy bites his nervously, then laughs when it leaves a gray smudge on his lip. You see something you rarely do, the beginning of use until now. Your job ended in boxes and crates. But this is the other side of your labor. A moment of transformation back at the factory. You begin your final task for the day, sorting broken returns, pencils too short to sharpen, pencils dropped and cracked, some used down to their ferrules. You pick one up and see it's been chewed near the tip. The paint is rubbed off. A small name is carved faintly into the wood. Karl Dot. You do not know Karl Dot, but in your hand is the evidence of his writing, his thoughts, his boredom, his frustration. This pencil is not just a tool. It is a memory, object, silent witness to someone's growth. You place it gently in the discard bin, but not without a moment's pause. Rumors continue about a coming Franco-Prussian conflict. The factory receives word that several shipments are rerouted through military cartographers in Berlin. Your batch includes H-grade pencils, ideal for drawing fine, crisp lines, perfect for boundaries, fortresses, topography. You stare at one of the pencils and wonder, will this line divide a village? Will it route a supply convoy? Will someone erase a forest to draw a trench? The pencil itself is blameless, but its line, that is another matter. One morning, a foreman gathers the crew. He explains that a new cutting machine has arrived. It will reduce the slat planing time by half. The sanding department will follow. Then painting, fewer hands, more pencils, he says. You nod. Others grumble. The truth is unavoidable. The work is becoming faster, cleaner, quieter, and less human still. Someone must load the wood. Someone must inspect the cores. Someone must adjust when the gears stick. Someone must still care. You raise your hand to train the new hires. You may not last forever, but your rhythm can. On your 10th work anniversary, the manager calls you forward. He hands you a small, worn book, the original factory ledger, opened to your first day. There's your name, smudged, faded. But there you touch the page, inked with a pencil made by someone before you, someone long gone. But the mark remains. It is a small ceremony, no speeches, but you think perhaps that is what the pencil teaches best. Lasting marks, quietly made. The sun sets, the factory hum fades. You finish one last inspection. You hold a pencil in your hand. Full length, unsharpened, paint still glossy. You don't box it. Instead, you slide it into your coat pocket. You don't know why. Maybe for your son, maybe for your thoughts. Maybe to remember that even when your hands stop working, your work may still leave a line. You step into the cooling air, cedar still in your lungs. Children walk home from school. Someone draws chalk on the wall. You think it is the year 1367 CE. In the empire of Malia, golden age for the western Sahel, when kings build mosques from mud, scribes copy Quranic texts on gazelle parchment, and gold flows from the rivers to distant ports. But today, you are not in the city. You are not under a minaret or beneath a royal dome. You are a caravan merchant, and you are in the desert, specifically somewhere between Tagaza, the famed salt mines, and Walata, a caravan stop in the southeastern fringe of the empire. You ride in a train of camels, 80 strong, each carrying blocks of salt, slabs 2 to 3 feet long, strapped in pairs across weathered saddles. Salt not, gold is the real currency of survival, and you are its unseen courier. They call it the ship of the desert, but for you, the camel is not metaphor. it is reality. You ride a tall, tan dromedary, one hump, lean, with eyes like worn leather, and a pace like a metronome. You do not name your camels. It is better not to. Some will not survive. The camels are loaded with salt slabs from Tegeza water, skins of camel hide, millet grain, in oiled leather, sackstrade beads, cloth, and a few precious cowries, for bartering a small chest with paper receipts. Written in Arabic script, you carry nothing unnecessary, not even emotion. Emotion is extra weight. At dawn, you rise with the call of the head scout. You pray, facing east, placing a scrap of cloth on the sand to protect your forehead. The caravan begins before the sun crests the dunes. The sand is cold on your feet, but that won't last. You ride in silence. No one talks unless necessary. The heat is still manageable. The camels move in single file, led by a boy no older than 12, who walks barefoot, eyes fixed on the constellations of old camel prints in the sand. There is no road-only memory. Each camel carries up to 300 pounds of salt blocks, cut from the mines of Tegeza in large rectangular slabs called Tegeza. These slabs are wrapped in rope made from palm fiber. They glint faintly in the morning sunlight, dry and impossibly heavy. Salt will be traded in Wallata, then perhaps carried further south to Timbuktu or east to Haussland. Salt buys food, slaves, books, even horses. You once saw a man trade to salt blocks for a bride. You've never questioned the price. Salt, in this land, is worth more than gold. Mid-morning, the sun rises higher. The shadows grow shorter. The caravan leader, an elder named Mahoud, checks direction not with a compass, but with the angle of the sun-wind patterns in the dunes. Memory of distant rock outcroppings, and sometimes, by taste of the sand, he licks his finger, presses it into the soil, and tastes for trace minerals, checking that the caravan hasn't strayed too far west toward dry salt flats, or too far east into wind-scoured wastlands. That there are maps, but they live in the minds of men, not on parchment. By midday, the temperature is over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The indigadied turban of the Tuareg, covering your mouth and nose, long, loose Gandaro sandals fashioned from camel leather, a leather pouch of dried dates and charcoal tablets to purify water you drink sparingly, a single gourd cap at a time. Too much and your stomach cramps, too little and your tongue cracks. The wind brings fine sand into your nostrils, into your ears, into your dreams. Still, the caravan marches. Late afternoon, you reach a desert well, nothing but a hole in the ground, ringed with stones, hidden behind a dune. The water is brackish, but clean enough. You draw it up in leather buckets, careful not to spill a drop. Each camel is given just enough. You count them one by one, checking for limps, for wounds from the ropes. 2 men refill skins. One tends to a wounded leg. You do not linger. The desert does not reward hesitation. At dusk, the caravan forms a circle. Camels are tethered. Fires are not allowed. Smoke draws attention, and the heat of the day still clings to the earth. You eat millet porridge, a few dried, fig-salted goat meat from a wrapped skin and water-warmed, no longer unpleasant. Then you pray again. You lie on a woven mat beneath stars so thick they seem to hum. The Milky Way is clear, the sky unspoiled. You do not miss cities tonight. The stars tell you everything: direction, time, weather, even loneliness in the distance. A single light flickers, a signal. A mistake, a trap. The scout reports that a caravan passed through this region 2 days ago, heading north. Could be remnants, could be Tuareg raiders, could be nothing. You rotate the watches. Every 2 hours, a new pair keeps eyes on the perimeter. You sleep lightly. Your hand rests on the dagger under your robe, not for fighting, but for cutting rope if you need to flee. Salt can be lost, but lives cannot be traded. As the camels groan and the wind picks up again, you lie awake under the vast sky and ask. You awaken before the sky lightens, your body stiff from the sand, your eyes stinging from dust. Around you, the caravan stirs in soft rustles, camel breath, the creak of ropes, the slide of woolen mats. No one speaks in the Sahara. Conversation is expensive. Every word dries the tongue. Every breath carries grit. You eat a piece of dry flatbread, softened slightly by a few drops of warm water, and pack your mat. Your legs remember the motion before your mind does. You mount your camel, settle your wrapped headcloth, and begin. By late morning, the caravan passes the outskirts of Tagaza salt mining town, once lively, now crumbling. Only a handful of salt huts remain, their walls made of salt blocks mortared with sand and camel dung. The miners are slaves, mostly from southern regions. Their eyes are gray from the salt dust. Their hands are permanently cracked, their lips white. They emerge from the pits to watch your caravan pass, silent. Some may have once traveled in caravans like yours. Now they will never leave. You look away. This is not your salt anymore. In the heat of the day, one camel collapses. You see it happen sudden, almost graceful. It folds into the sand like a kneeling prayer, but does not rise. Its eyes are glazed, its sides heave. A small crowd forms. The caravan leader, Mahmoud, steps forward. He kneels beside the beast, feels for breath, lifts a lip to check the gums. Too much, he mutters. The salt was too heavy. 2 men unstrap the salt blocks. The camel moans softly as they redistribute the weight among others. The collapsed beast is not abandoned. Mahmoud leaves water beside its mouth. It may rise, it may not. The caravan cannot wait to find out. At midday, the wind shifts. You cover your face tighter. Sand slices across your cheek. Someone curses under their breath. You hear it faintly. The heat rises from the ground in shimmering waves. You taste copper on your tongue. It's not real metal, just the Thames of desert blood, the thinning of breath. This is the part of the desert where men begin to question whether the journey is worth it. But then, far ahead, you see a cluster of palms, low and green. You reach a well by late afternoon. The oasis is small, no buildings, just tents and palms. But it hosts traders from 3 directions. You see Tuareg horsemen selling silver, jewelry, a Songhai merchant offering dyed cloth, a Berber with a basket of red ochre and dried medicinal roots, 1 man from Egypt, his robe too fine for this place. With scrolls, he refuses to unroll. You unpack 4 blocks of salt and begin to barter. You trade 1 block for 2 sacks of millet, 1 for a small leather satchel of dried kola nuts, 1 for a pair of goat leather sandals, 1 for information. Has the road to Walata been safe? You ask. The Berber shrugs. It is a road. It is never safe. As evening falls, a grayot begins to sing. He is old, his voice cracked like aged bark, but his words ripple through the oasis like water over stone. He sings of Sundiata, the lion, king of Mali traders, swallowed by sand the day the salt road split into a marriage, paid in gold, dust, and camels. The silence of a map drawn in memory. You offer him a palm's worth of millet as thanks. He nods, touching his chest in gratitude. Stories are more than entertainment here. They are navigation tools, inheritance maps, legal documents with rhythm. You fall asleep under the stars, his voice still in your ear. 2 days later, the caravan moves again. The sands are redder now, and rocks begin to appear sharp, rust teeth rising from the earth. The heat has changed. It's drier, harsher. You pass a dead tree, petrified and sun-bleached. It looks like a claw grasping at the sky. Ahead, the scout signals dot footprints, not yours, not camel, humans, walking, not riding, not part of your caravan. Bandits. You tighten your grip on your waterskin and glance to the side. Mahmoud adjusts the formation to scouts behind. 2 ahead, the camels do not break pace. This is the part where the journey feels thin, like thread pulled across a blade. That night, without sign, the sky changes. Wind rises. Sand follows. The storm arrives before it announces itself. Sand whipping sideways, erasing footprints, blinding eyes, choking mouths. You crouch beside your camel. Wrap yourself in your robe and do not move. The storm lasts for hours. It is not violent. It is dissolving, as if the world is being unwritten by wind. When it ends, the caravan is silent, but intact. You thank God in 3 languages. You spend the next day reorienting. No footprints, no visible trail, no markers. Mahmoud consults a small wooden tablet, etched with constellations and verses. He traces a path with his finger, looking not at the wood, but at the sky. You find your direction again. The Sahara may erase footprints, but it cannot erase memory. That night, as you chew a dried fig and refill your waterskin, you look at the block of salt beside your bedroll, chipped, dirty, and still heavier than it should be. You ask. The sand under your camel's feet grows lighter, almost golden. A light breeze pushes from the southeast, carrying with it the distant scent of charcoal smoke and pounded millet. Not wind, not memory, but civilization. You crest a low dune, and there it is, Oualata. A city of reddish earthen walls, nestled against the barren plain like a mirage made solid. From this distance, it looks like it grew from the sand walls adorned with geometric reliefs, watchtowers crowned with woven shade roofs. You sigh not relief, but recognition. This is not the end of the road, but it is a pause in its long breath. The caravan slows as it nears the outer gates. There is a queue. Another salt train from Tagaza. 2 camels with dyed indigo hides from the Niger bend. A solitary scholar in a white turban leading a donkey. You wait your turn. When you reach the gate, a clerk in white robes steps forward. He holds a tablet and a reed stylus. What do you carry? He asks. You list your items. Salt blocks, 36. Remaining cloth rolls, 3 dried cola nuts, 1 sack receipts for salt pre-purchased by a merchant named Al-Hassan. Nods, stamps your name on a palm leaf using an inked seal, and waves you through. You have arrived. The marketplace is not loud, but it buzzes like a beehive made of barter. You pass. A woman selling indigo-dyed cloth from Conaway youth, offering dates. Warm from the Suna blacksmith, sharpening tools, with a foot-pedaled grindstone man, stirring a clay pot of tea, spiced and bitter. For passing scholars you lead your camel through narrow lanes, until you find your trading posta, flat-roofed stall, with a carved sign, Al-Hassan and Sons. Caravan receivers you are met with a smile, a handshake, and a brass bowl of water. The salt, at last, has reached its destination. Inside the trading post, a sledgehammer waits beside a long plank. You help split the salt slabs into quarters. Trade weight. Each quarter is measured, stamped, and added to a stack that will be shipped further south to Dimbuk, to then beyond to Jengao, and even forest villages near the Gulf of Guinea. Salt that began as mined rock now becomes currency. You are paid in cowries. That evening, you meet the man you saw at the gates, a scholar with sand-colored robes and a long wooden staff. He carries a small collection of books, bound in goatskin, handwritten in Arabic. You share tea. You offer a date. He speaks of Timbuktu, where he studies astronomy. You ask, "Do you travel alone?" He smiles. No man in the desert is alone. He carries the stars, the road, and the work of others. He tells you something that stays with you. Every city rests on a line of salt, drawn by men who disappear behind it. Before leaving, you visit the camel pens outside the city. Your caravan has lost 3, 1 died. 2 were traded for food after the storm. You walk among the animals, listening to their breaths, inspecting their hooves, lifting their tails, checking for disease. You find a young one, strong, quiet-eyed, with a white stripe across its flank. You do not name it, but you place your hand on its. You nod, no words needed. You climb the edge of the city that night and sit atop the mud-brick wall. You see the desert behind you, flat. Endless the city before you will live, glowing the salts still heavy in your bones. You think of those who died on the road, of the miners who never leave the pits, of the boy who led the first camel, bare feet calloused. Salt you trade, or the silence it demands. After 3 nights, you begin to prepare for your return journey. The camels are loaded again, not with salt, but with grain cloth, a bundle of scrolls for a Sufi teacher in Tichetand, an oiled leather pouch of black ink and paper, meant to record new caravan routes. You are not just a trader now. You are a bearer of knowledge, a carrier of lines, a living map. The Sahara does not give gifts, but it does leave traces in the soles of your feet, the cuts on your fingers, the taste of sweat. You mount your camel, turn north, and begin again. There will be more storms, more silence, more weight, and yet you go. Because it is 1671 CE, in Istanbul, the capital of the Ottoman Empire realm, stretching from Hungary to Yemen, from Algiers to Mecca. The sultans rule with might, the janissaries guard with steel, the viziers shape policy with whispers. But you rule with a pen. You are a bureaucrat in the imperial archive. You copy names until the reed of your pen grows soft. You are one of many, and without you, the empire falls apart. The archive building is not grand. It sits to the side of Topkapi Palace, nestled behind a guarded courtyard, a low, rectangular structure with thick stone walls and small windows, meant to keep out sun, rats, and fire. Inside, rows of cabinets, wooden drawers with brass handles, Dust fine, dry, imperial dust you arrive before sunrise. You do not speak unless spoken to. You bow slightly when passing senior scribes. Your hands are already stained with ink before the city finishes its first call to prayer. It is a simple wooden plank, carved initials in Ottoman scripts, some yours, most not. It has been used by dozens before you. You are only the next hand to hold the pen on it. A reed pen, trimmed every morning gay dish of iron gall ink, freshly mixed with oak galls and copper sulfate sharpening knife, a stack of imperial records, to be copied or translated. Your fingers smell of metal, and your nails are permanently blackened. This is not a flaw. It is your badge of duty. You are part of the scribe class, or katibs. You are not noble, but you are not common. You are educated, trained in Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish. You write in Divani script, elegant, dense, difficult to forge. It is an art form, and it is a trap. One mistake, and a land grant goes to the wrong pasha. You copy tax registers from distant provinces, marriage licenses for court, families, military, payrolls, translations of complaints from merchants' inventories of F properties, religious endowments. Each document must be perfect. You are not praised for accuracy. You are punished for mistakes. Beside you sits Halal Effendi, an old man whose hand is famous in the chancery. He writes titles and headers in giant script, his pen moving like a dancer, sweeping loops, sharp angles, controlled elegance. He once wrote a Hatay Humayun, a sultanic decree signed by the Sultan himself. You watch his hand with quiet awe. He drinks tea with cloves, sharpens his pen with a worn-down bone. He mutters poetry under his breath while copying death notices from Aleppo. He does not speak often, but when he does, he says, "The empire ends when we stop writing it." But the documents, some centuries old, are dry as tinder. Every scribe is trained in fire protocol. If a spark is seen, ring the belif, a fire starts. Grab the imperial firmans first, then the defter records. Do not attempt to save personal belongings. Do not argue with the fire wardens. One man did 5 years ago. He was not seen again. At midday the scribes gather in the shaded courtyard. You eat lentil soup, bread, sometimes a slice of sheep cheese, always with water, sometimes with sherbet, if there is reason to celebrate. No one talks of politics. That is dangerous. You discuss the cost of ink powder, the new shipment of reed pens from Syria-weather. The tax code of 1611 is better than the revision of 1657. This is your world. Words, paper, procedure, stability. No one outside the archive understands the satisfaction of a well-aligned ledger. Today you are assigned a difficult task, a document from a Crimean border station, written half in Tatar, half in broken Ottoman script. It describes a dispute over grazing lands and lost sheep, but hidden within the flowery phrasing is something more. The garrison is running low on food. Morale is low. Deserters have fled south. You translate it carefully. You do not add opinion. You do not speculate. You write what is written. No more, no less. But in your mind, a question lingers. How many provinces are fraying at the edge while the ink here flows smooth? At the end of the day, you return the reed pen to its tray, blow gently on the last line of ink, and roll your shoulders. You wash your hands, But the stains do not fade. You look around at the rows of drawers, the scrolls, the sealed records no one has opened in decades, and you wonder. You arrive before dawn, as usual, but today a red ribbon has been tied to your desk drawer. This is not decoration, it is a warning. Inside your stack of papers, the wrong family is now listed as the legal tax collector for 10 acres of fig-producing, military supply chains, and Vakif contributions to a mosque endowment. This is the terror of your work. One curve of the pen can shift the empire's balance. Mistakes are recorded in a ledger, kept under lock in the office of the Baz Khatib, chief clerk. Names are listed, dates, errors, consequences. Your name is now there. No punishment follows today. But 3 listings in a year may result in demotion or worse, transfer to a provincial office. Far from Istanbul, you return to your desk with a stiff back and calmer breath. You double-check every diacritic now, even the ones only God would notice. Every 2 weeks, the scribes conduct preservation tasks. You remove old ledgers from their drawers, lay them out flat, check for insect holes, water, stains, faded ink, crumbling vellum, agizu. Brush each page lightly with rose water, using a feather to lift dust. You apply starch paste to the torn corners. These are not books, they are veins in the empire's body, each one carrying orders, taxes, titles, punishments, prayers. You do not read what they say, but you feel their age. Some are 200 years old, still breathing, still binding. That afternoon, news passes quietly down the archive floor. A courier from Cairo has gone missing. He was carrying a parcel of sealed documents, tribute tallies, and Hajj pilgrimage registries. Last seen near Damascus. The archive receives only a copy of a summary. Missing pages 2 and 6. You are assigned to reconstruct the missing entries based on pattern, precedent, and internal phrasing. You do this with care, but you know what you recreate may not be true. Still, the document will be stamped, stored, cited. Your guess will become policy. You look at your ink-stained fingers and ask, not for the first time, is this still copying or authorship?